Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, and I am back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. Welcome back to this show, Drew. Say hello to all your favorite listeners around the world.
How we doing, guys? My skin condition has healed, and I am back to being as good as new. So no more concerns. Sam and Jordan both filled in marvelously, but obviously I'm needed back. So I'm here, and let's get going here.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the many prayers for Drew out there. You guys did a great job with that trend. But let's talk some Vikings football now that we finally do have Drew back. This is what we have on the docket today. As with so many of these off-season episodes, I've said this so many times before, we're relying a lot on kind of us, our tangents and whatnot. We'll be talking about Mike Zimmer's eye a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about OTAs and some of the storylines going into that, some of the stuff to kind of keep an eye on. Then we'll do our top five, the regular top five segment, which this week we're doing our top five quarterbacks across the NFL as it stands currently. And then Drew's going to play a little bit of catch-up work. He doesn't want to miss out on the opportunity to give his top five Vikings, so he's going to do that. And if we have a little bit of time, which I imagine we just might, Drew will share with you his Twitter pet peeves as well, so we'll round that one out. Because
I got a couple to add.
Apparently, Drew didn't want to miss that last episode because Sam and I did such a phenomenal job, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. But because we're going to be doubling up on it because Drew's going to get in the mix as well. So that will be at the end of the show here. But for now, let's jump into this Mike Zimmer eye situation. First things first, Drew. For anyone that didn't want to read in depth about this, kind of give me the skinny on what's going on with Mike Zimmer, and I believe it's his 8th eye surgery.
Yeah, so I think it was a few days ago that news came out of the 8th eye surgery, and then while he was talking to Paul and today on K-Fan, he kind of announced that he'll be taking some time away to miss OTAs just as kind of to rest, to recuperate, and kind of to take some stress off of him as he recovers so he's ready for training camp and kind of the full swing of the NFL season. So, it looks like nothing but a wise decision. I'm sure it's a medical, professional, expert opinion and recommendation. So, but it's just, it's kind of a sign of how serious this thing is. 8 surgeries is no joke. And
I haven't had. How many surgeries have you had in your entire life, Drew? Like combined total?
4.
Okay.
I've had 4.
Okay, I've had 2, and one of them includes pulling my teeth. So combined between Drew and I, and both of my surgeries were very relaxed surgeries. Don't get me wrong. I was in no danger unless the anesthesiologist decided to kill me. I was in no danger whatsoever. So Drew and I have a combined total of less surgeries through our about close to 50 years of living than Mike Zimmer has had just about over the last 9 months. So that should give you an idea of how severe this really is.
Right. It's just, I tweeted this today too. The one thing I thought of was, for some reason, if there's any Vikings fans or anybody really in the NFL that's taking Mike Zimmer's time in Minnesota for granted, I would advise you stop that, because seriously, this is a sign that his time as a head coach might be coming to an end sooner than we think. He's in his 60s, I believe.
Yep. He's an old guy.
He's not a young dude. He's been coaching for a long time. We've talked about it before, how it took so long for him to get a head coaching gig, and now he's here, and he's got some health issues that may, decrease his tenure as a head coach. So I would hope that Spielman and company, and I assume they're making the right calls here, are formulating a backup plan, and are going to be ready in the case that Zimmer's, at this point it's very possible that his time could come to an end at any point. So I would hope they're ready for that, and that's kind of the one thing I wanted to get across about this whole issue.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I really like that you brought that up, because it wasn't a point that I was going to stick home here, and I'm glad that you did, because the idea of living in the moment isn't something anyone does very well. I'm going to get a little philosophical on you guys here. Living in the moment isn't something that anyone does well, but when you look back, it's hard. You always look back and think to yourself, oh man, I wish I had, exercised my love of this more while it was actually going on. For me, it's high school. I miss high school. I'm not going to lie. I had a really good time in high school, and I think back and think, you know what, there's more I could have done during that 4-year period. Well, we are entering, I believe, the 4th year of Mike Zimmer's career with Minnesota, and this eye thing, like I said, it's obviously very serious right now, and with 8 surgeries and whatnot. Is it career-threatening at this point? Well, we haven't received news of that just yet. I feel like Mike Zimmer is definitely going to go down fighting here, and he will fight for every last year of coaching based off what I currently know about him. But at the same time, we could be looking at, this could be like the last couple years of Mike Zimmer's career. Like Drew said, he's in his 60s. If this eye condition continues, maybe you can cover it up with a patch, maybe you can cover it up with glasses, maybe you can, mitigate it to some degree. But at some point here, this is probably going to be the reason why Mike Zimmer, at the very least, isn't a head coach anymore. He could still be on as a personnel person, someone to help you out, a conduct guy, someone that just lays the tone. But at the same time, I think that it's important to start looking at the candidates to, be the guy to step in if Mike Zimmer can't be the guy. And I think that we actually have a couple good guys on the coaching staff already. Not necessarily to come in and be head coach, but to step in and do it like Mike Prefer did against the Cowboys last year.
Right.
Someone available on the roster to give us a real chance to win. And I think Mike Prefer did an honorable job last year. Someone I want to talk about real quick is Andre Patterson, because I've seen his name come up in the news a couple of times. Mike Zimmer speaking very, very highly of Mr. Patterson there. The Vikings have a heck of a defensive line right now, and he's a big portion of that. I guess, Drew, what do you think of Andre Patterson and the potential for him to kind of be the defensive brains while Mike Zimmer's out here, if it's for any longer than just OTAs?
Well, I think today on KFan, Mike Zimmer gave Patterson really high praise and said I think this is literally what he said. He said he's the highest, he's the best defensive line coach in the NFL. So, clearly the coaching staff and the team loves Patterson. They respect what he does, and it's when you really look at what he's done with this team over the last couple of years and working with Mike Zimmer. I guess I'm not 100% sure on my knowledge or memory of the history here, but has he gotten any offers to be defensive coordinator at all, or another team?
Any offers that have came out haven't been reported directly, so anything that we would know. Okay. Basically, we wouldn't. They have covered up anything to my knowledge. Right. If any of our listeners happen to remember and want to correct us on that, but I don't remember any time when Andre Patterson has been announced as a candidate for a starting coaching job or a coordinator position. At the same time, I would bet pretty good money that he has at least been involved in some interviews at some point. If he is seen as viewed as highly by everyone else as Mike Zimmer does. Right.
Exactly. So it's just look at all this talent on the defensive line. Look how productive they've been over the last few years. We like to look at Zimmer, and he's obviously the guy that gets all the credit or a lot of the credit and the attention for it. But Andre Patterson is the guru that's specializing those guys and evolving their talent. So he deserves a ton of credit for what they've done as well. And Zimmer is definitely giving it to him too, as far as what he said in the interview today on KFan.
Yeah, and like I said with Mike Prefer, that's a guy that we can probably trust at this point to come in and run the show. He's obviously not a offense or defense specific guy because he's a special teams guy, but let's keep in mind guys like John Harbaugh, for example, became a head coach out of being a special teams coordinator. So if you don't think that a special teams guy is capable of stepping in and filling that role, Mike Prefer is actually pretty qualified based off of history, at least in my personal opinion. So that's a guy that could step in and be a kind of the tone setter for the Vikings. I don't know if he will be at OTAs, for example, if he'll be the one calling the shots. But that's a guy that you could at least depend on to play that role. How you feel about Mike Prefer based off of his comments with Chris Cluey and whatnot, I understand that kind of stuff, but at the same time, that was a long time ago. I would like to think that Mike Prefer has changed his personality a little bit since then, and is a little bit more reliable with regard to his language and the stuff that he chooses to say to players and the stuff players choose to expose him for. So hopefully that has been resolved here. I trust Mike Prefer. Another guy I want to talk about real quick before we jump into OTAs is George Edwards, the defensive coordinator, a guy that I don't think really receives enough credit for what he does. I wrote an article about him last year about his candidacy as a coach, assuming Mike Zimmer's success continues, because this is one of the few guys that really knows the ins and outs of Mike Zimmer's defense. So I think he has a lot of value. Maybe as a defensive coordinator somewhere down the line, or I don't know if he's what his personality looks like if he is a head coaching candidate, but he is very valuable to this team. I think that, especially moving into OTAs here, assuming Edwards is present, that would be a guy that I would look to as well here to keep, a tone setter, a guy to keep guys on track. Remember, this is organized team activities. This isn't coach activities. This is supposed to be run by the players, the kind of coaches basically just keeping everyone in line here. What do you think of George Edwards in terms of, I guess, what I'm talking about here? Keeping guys in line, making sure that everything is done the Mike Zimmer way, and just, trusting him to employ the system that Mike Zimmer would have had he had been available for OTAs.
Well, yeah, I mean, I look back again to that Dallas game last year where Zimmer was unavailable, and they more or less shut down a Dallas offense that was our top 5 in the NFL, probably.
Yes.
So,
at least the running game was top.
Right.
So
when you talk about keeping guys in line, Edwards certainly did an excellent job of that, and you can argue one way or the other on a couple plays, turnovers, etc. In that Dallas game, the Vikings come out with a win there against, I think, were they the number 1 seed in the NFC last year? So
I
think they were.
You take back an accident on a 2-point conversion attempt where someone jumped off sides. If you take that away,
that's right.
Then all of a sudden game might look a little bit different. But we've been down that road. So let's jump into OTAs here. Like I said, not a whole lot to talk about with OTAs because it is just organized team activities. It's about who shows up. It's about getting to know your teammates. I think this is kind of, from my vantage point, this is a chemistry building activity right here, right? This is a part of the program, the offseason program for the guys the free agents to come in, the rookies to come in and really kind of immerse themselves in the culture, which in my opinion, it does hurt that Mike Zimmer's not there because he is such a foundational piece of this culture. But at the same time, you trust that your veterans, guys like Brian Robinson come right to my mind, we'll keep everyone in line and really make sure that everyone's doing everything in accordance with the plan. I would assume that Pat Shurmur will be there, so that this shouldn't affect the offensive side of the ball at all. If he's not, I like the offensive guys to get things done. Sam Bradford is a guy that I trust. Obviously, he's not Teddy Bridgewater, and I know that every single time I say Bradford's name, I have to bring up Bridgewater as well. But Bradford is a guy that I certainly trust to run the show for the Vikings offense, and I think that they will get quite a bit done in these next couple days here with the organized team activities. And let's talk about a couple of major, I guess it's kind of pre-camp battles. I guess we'll call them OTA battles or OTA storylines. You pick your poison, whatever word works for you. Let's talk about a couple of these positions here. First one that comes to my mind here is wide receiver, and the reason why wide receiver comes to my mind is because Mike Floyd, his house arrest was moved to Minnesota, so now he can participate in this kind of stuff. And this was something that we talked about earlier on how Floyd coming in, he needs to be in the program in order to have a real shot at making the team. He has that shot now. At the same time, you've got a much bigger, more competitive wide receiver depth chart. What are you seeing from this group, Drew? And I guess, are any decisions going to be made based off of this week of practice?
Well, I don't think any decisions will be made, but I think it's interesting just because of how many there are. There's how many receivers are there? 12 or 13?
There's a lot. If you go from all the way down from Stephon Diggs down to about Caleb Jones-ish or Mitch Williams, who's the other one?
It's R.J. Shelton or something like that.
Is another one too. Yeah, the undrafted free agent out of Michigan State. So there are a lot of bodies here. There's a lot of opportunity too. I think that this is for guys like R.J. Shelton. That's a great name to bring up. For guys like him, this is a real opportunity to show that you're for real and not just a camp body.
Right.
So I guess what are you looking at from this wide receiver depth chart, Drew? Obviously, there's the name at the top. The names at the top, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, who aren't going anywhere. But after that, there are some guys that really need to prove some stuff.
Well, yeah. The big name, I guess, not so big name anymore, but Moritz Boringer. He was one of my favorite guys last year, and I keep trying to believe that he's going to find a job. But this is his second go around now. The rookie nerves, the kind of the new being in the NFL, the big time. He should be used to that by now. So now it's time to show that you can produce, show that you can be an impact player in the NFL, and maybe it doesn't necessarily mean making the Vikings roster, but if you can, impress enough to find yourself on a different roster somewhere else. So that's one guy I'll watch for sure, just because of the whole story. It's really cool that he was drafted. I think the first from Germany. Maybe shouldn't have been drafted, but that's another discussion. For sure, Moritz Bringer. And then, of course, Stacey Coley. Is he going to be that sixth guy, or they're going to have six receivers? I think I'm pretty high on Coley. I've said before, I think he'll be the go-to slot guy by the end of 2017. So there's a lot to watch for sure. I think just in general there is, because there's so many guys. But
absolutely. You mentioned a couple of good names there. Moritz Bringer was not one of the good names you mentioned, but you did mention some good stuff there. And for me, I'm watching Isaac Frichte from this group, and the reason why for him that I'm watching him specifically is because I know a lot of people like to compare his path to the Bigs. Again, pick your poison on word choice there. Is a lot of people like to compare him to Adam Thielen, and I don't like that, just because obviously it's a white thing. He's white, just like Adam Thielen, and he's taking a while to progress. Yeah. So a lot of people like to make that comparison, but to some degree it's fair. But what really makes it important for me is this is his last real shot at making an NFL roster, right? He doesn't have practice squad eligibility anymore. This is his final say. So if Isaac Frichte doesn't impress the Vikings enough to make top 6 or whatever it is that they decide on their wide receiver depth chart, he'll be looking for a job somewhere else. And if he doesn't, there's probably a team that can use his talent somewhere. But at the same time, like I said, this is his last shot. And anytime someone's back is up against the wall, I think that's a fun storyline to follow. So that is one guy that I will be watching from this wide receiver depth chart. And then obviously Michael Floyd, how he immerses himself in this offense, how it works out for him. If he does turn out to be a good fit. And I think obviously the one that, it kind of goes without saying at some point, because I think a lot of us just watch him inherently now, is Laquan Treadwell. I mean, is this guy? Right. What's this guy gonna do? We've gotten to the point with him where everyone's watching him. We don't even mention his name anymore. We just want to know, is he gonna be good or is he a bust? And I think that you can tell a lot of that by how he practices with his teammates and how his teammates respond to him, and not just his motivators, not just his buddies, not just his coaches telling us how hard he's working, but how Jarius Wright, for example, says Laquan Treadwell is working on a Vikings.com interview. Something like that. That will be something I'm looking for with Laquan Treadwell, just to see what his progression is like, because obviously we won't really know until preseason.
Yeah, that Michael Floyd and Laquan Treadwell, it's not an official camp battle, but right. I think just given their skill sets, given what they're known for, both physically and kind of what they've done on the field and production, with Treadwell at Ole Miss and with Floyd as a Cardinal, their roles should be similar, especially in this offense. So I think it's going to be a battle between those two. And like I said before, I favor Floyd. Yeah, I think he's the way more talented player. I think Treadwell's got a lot of proof. But again, this is only OTAs. I think training camp is where we'll really see these type of things play out. So this is kind of, like you said, more of a chemistry builder to prep for training camp, I guess.
Okay, so wide receivers is kind of I feel like the top spot on the offensive side of the football to watch. On the defensive side of the football, there are a couple of good spots, but I'll try to narrow it down to just one positional group. Defensive line as a whole, I think it's very interesting at this point. After bringing in Will Sutton, after bringing in Jaleel Johnson, after bringing in Datone Jones, how do these guys mesh? And like I just said, big chemistry building thing here. Just because Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin are playing on the outside doesn't mean they need to know exactly what Datone Jones is doing at 3 technique, for example, in order for this unit to be as effective as it possibly can be. So things like that are very important to me, because I want to know who's going to be lining up at 3 tech. Obviously, we know Linval Joseph is going to be at the nose spot, but who's going to be his rotational guy right behind him? Who are going to be getting all of those snaps in the interior? I think it's pretty obvious that Brian Robinson, Everson Griffin, and Danielle Hunter will handle the outside stuff, but the interior things are very interesting to me. Obviously, like I said, Linval Joseph is going to be playing the majority of the reps, but what happens behind him? What happens next to him? What happens with Sharif Floyd? There's a lot of interesting little things going on with this defensive line position that kind of, like I said, we start the road to figuring out the answers to these questions at OTAs.
Yeah, I like defensive line as kind of one of those positions to watch. I was thinking more of linebacker, the third starting linebacker position. yeah, obviously you have Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks as two kind of locked-in starters, and then you have that third spot is kind of a wild card because we've talked about Eric Kendricks' versatility before. He can play inside or he can play outside. So, Emmanuel Lemur, I'm not a big fan. I don't like his name because it's really weird to say. It sounds like you have like all kinds of molasses in your mouth, so I don't like that. But then you have Ben Gideon, 4th-round pick, Michigan. You have Elijah Lee, 7th-round pick, Kansas State. And you have Edmund Robinson, too. I think his name has kind of been forgotten, kind of in that linebacker shuffle because of these two new guys they brought in. So there's 4 names there that realistically have a chance to start for the Vikings defense. So that's one thing I'll be watching for sure. And, obviously that position is not used a ton in the defense as the Vikings are, I don't know what percent nickel, but a lot percent nickel. But again, it's a starting position. It's your base defense, and there's going to be a very inexperienced player starting, regardless of who ends up winning that job.
Yeah, that's an important point. I think just the level of inexperience that transitions over to the defensive line as well. Because you can say that yes, Detone Jones is a guy that's been playing the league for 4 years now, but he hasn't been playing 3 technique. So that's inexperience there. If it's Jaleel Johnson at 3 tech or filling in at the nose spot, obviously. He's not a very experienced player, technically speaking. He's a rookie, and it's self-explanatory. Will Sutton is a guy that's been playing in a 3-4 look for the last couple of years with Vic Fangio, a look that he doesn't fit, and something we talked about in the last episode here. So there's some inexperience there as well. There's a lot of experience questions to answer about this entire group, and yet, like we said, a lot of them will not be answered by OTAs, but this is the starting point, and something kind of to keep an eye on. And as a Vikings fan in the middle of May, transitioning into June here pretty soon, you take what you can get. And OTAs is going to be a source of fodder for Twitter, for just these conversations, and honestly for Drew and I to have more to talk about on this podcast. Yeah. So hopefully there are some kind of big announcements here. Otherwise, you're going to be listening to some shorter About the Labor podcasts in the near future here.
Absolutely. Yeah, which, some people like the shorter ones, but some people like to listen to us talk for an hour and a half. So we are appealing to our entire audience here.
Yeah, we're a versatile group. We like to offer versatility, just like Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer like to bring it in. So that is the game plan for us moving forward, and we'll transition that segment out into the Take 5 segment. Like I said, first things first, we'll be handling our top 5 quarterbacks, and then we'll get into Drew's makeup sessions after that. So starting with you, Drew. Top 5 quarterbacks, you're kind of the reason why this subject continues to come up, because you refuse to admit a certainty that I like to debate you on, and I know you like to bring it up on Twitter a lot, so there's a reason why we're doing this. Give me your top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I actually ranked my all 32 starting QBs just because I saw Jonathan Kinsley do it. He has a deep ball project. Some of you may follow him on Twitter, but he goes strictly off of film and then ranks guys, so I thought, well, I'll throw up a ranking and see what happens, and it just blew up on Twitter. It got into the hands of Seahawks Twitter, where my ranking of Andrew Luck was ahead of Russell Wilson, and I was, stoned for that. So, but my top 5, I'll start from 5. 5 is Ben Roethlisberger. He has some kind of inconsistency that I don't totally love. A few kind of rocky performances, mostly on the road. But overall, the guy is how hard is he to sack? He's a humongous human being. Yeah. Big cannon of an arm. He's a winner. That throw to Santonio Holmes in that Super Bowl against the Cardinals is the greatest throw maybe ever.
2004,
maybe ever,
right? So. I think that was the first Super Bowl throw that I really remember. Was it 2008? Was it 2000? Yeah. When did they win in 2004?
They beat Seattle that year.
Okay.
2005 is what you're thinking of. That was his rookie season, actually.
Okay, so, there you go.
Anyway, 5 is Roethlisberger. 4 is my guy Andrew Luck. I defend this guy to the death, really. He's given literally 0 to work with in Indianapolis. They don't have a defense. They don't have an offensive line. Their running back is 39-year-old Frank Gore, or whatever he is now, 52 or something like that. And outside of T.Y. Hilton, he doesn't really have much for weapons. His second leading target last year after T.Y. Hilton was something named Jack Doyle. So, that's what he's given to work with, and he's still he keeps the Colts in games they shouldn't be in. Granted, they're playing in the AFC South, but
he crushed the Vikings last year with the basketball player.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't even remember his name, so that should tell you kind of if something Swope or Swoops or something like
Ryan
that. So,
Swope,
yeah, whatever. Anyway, 3 is Drew Brees. He's just his accuracy on some of these passes he makes is unreal. He's super efficient. Again, not in the best situation as far as sporting cast with that defense. It hasn't been good since ever, maybe. So, Drew Brees, number 3. Number 2 is Tom Brady. This is kind of what we're going to debate our 1 and 2 here, I think. As far as talent, it's not his pedigree as a championship quarterback is what has him number 2. It's actually what has him high on my list. I just don't see, he's really not number 1 because of who number 1 is. Number 1 is Aaron Rodgers because Rodgers is he's honestly, to me, the most talented quarterback that's ever stepped on a football field. He does literally everything you want a quarterback to do. He's mobile. He can throw the ball 80 yards on a Hail Mary and give you a chance from your own 20. He scrambles. He plays clutch. He does. You look at those games. Was it the Arizona playoff game a couple years ago where it was 4th and 20 at his own 8, and he got a first down. It sucks to say because he's a Packer.
He's incredible, Drew. I know. I understand. Yes.
Okay. It's unreal. That's all I'm going to say. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the NFL.
Aaron Rodgers is a very, very good quarterback. He's a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. So that will lead you right into my top 5 rankings. Actually, I believe our rankings we had the same 5 guys in our list here. So not a whole lot of parity. I will list a couple honorable mentions because I do think that they should be named here. Phillip Rivers is one guy that I really, really like as a quarterback that I think has been dealt a bad hand and that I think could have been a lot more successful given better circumstances. There are obviously times when he should have won more than he had. Think about when LaDainian Tomlinson was in his prime. I don't take... There's a reason why he's not in my top 5, right? But at the same time, I do think he deserves an honorable mention. Him and then also Russell Wilson, who I think could very easily be in this top 5 list. He could easily push Andrew Luck for me, but the one reason why is I just love... I'm with Drew. I love Andrew Luck, too. I think he's the most complete guy. He's the most complete signal caller to ever come out of the draft, in my opinion. You can't find a better
Imagine starting a franchise right now. You have no context for your coaching staff, your supporting cast, whatever. Which quarterback in the league right now will you pick?
Exactly. You take Andrew Luck over Russell Wilson.
Taking Andrew Luck. Yep.
Right. So, so that'll jump right into my list there. Number 5 for me, Andrew Luck. And Drew explained it very well. This is the guy to start your franchise with. He's still very young. He's got plenty of development to do. He's got probably 10, maybe 15 more years left. How long do quarterback careers go at this point? I don't know. He seems like kind of a bit of a bionic man where he's never has an issue. He's always out on the field. I really like that about him. Another thing that I really
when there is an issue, he's on the field. He played with some spleen issue or something last year in 2015.
He's tough. Yeah. He's smart. He controls his offense, and he makes the most out of T.Y. Hilton, who, yes, he's a good player, but I don't think T.Y. Hilton is as good as Andrew Luck makes him look, to be quite honest with you. So Andrew Luck is number 5. Number 4, Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger could easily be number 3 on this list. The only reason he's not is because I just happen to like the guy in front of him a little bit more. 2-time Super Bowl champion. Drew mentioned the Santonio Holmes touchdown. He also mentioned inadvertently the rookie year winning the Super Bowl as a quarterback. That's sensational. Just think about winning. Think about if a rookie quarterback came in this season and just won the Super Bowl. Think about Deshaun Watson wins the Super Bowl for Houston this season. We start talking immediately about Deshaun Watson's Hall of Fame candidacy as a rookie signal caller. That's a humongous achievement and something that may never happen again. So Ben Roethlisberger in at number 4. Number 3, the guy that beat the Vikings in 2009. Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He's the one Saint that I will never hate because I think that this guy has the mental makeup of the perfect quarterback. If there's one guy that I want from an intangible standpoint as a quarterback, it's Drew Brees because I think that he does everything perfectly. He listens. He's experienced. How good has he gotten at running that offense that is just strictly basically a passing attack, right?
What he does pre-snap, too, is unreal.
It's unbelievable what he's able to accomplish and what he has been able to accomplish with his surroundings. I mean, people talk about how he hasn't made the postseason a whole lot. The Saints haven't been very good. And they've been in salary cap hell for a very long time, and they're trading away guys like Brandon Cooks because of it. And yet, Drew Brees still keeps them competitive. I mean, this is just a very good quarterback, and one that, I think that people could rank higher on this list, if not for the immense talent at the very, very top of my quarterback list here. Number 2 is Aaron Rodgers. Like Drew said, most incredible quarterback to ever step foot on the field in terms of a talent standpoint. Intangibly, I question his leadership. I've done this a couple of different times. I question the fact that he's kind of arrogant. I think he's smug. I think he's a jerk. I don't think that people really love playing.
But that doesn't matter.
It does matter because it rubs off on his teammates. Does it though? There is no Patriot in the world, past or present, that will ever say that there's a better quarterback than Tom Brady, and that's why he's number 1 on this list. Nobody ever argues who the best quarterback is. If you played a snap in New England, you know who the best quarterback is. And guys like DeTone Jones come over from Green Bay, and they're not talking about Aaron Rodgers being the best quarterback anymore. They're talking about how they want to eat him. Okay? So, all I'm saying is there's a respect thing there, and it's not quantifiable, but there's something there with Tom Brady. There's an it factor, and that, to me, trumps talent all day. And when your entire ring is worth more than my bank account will ever be, just your hand of rings costs more money than my bank account ever will, you're the greatest quarterback of all time, and there's no question about it. This guy, guys, Tom Brady has been in the Super Bowl more often over the last decade than the Vikings have been relevant. Okay? So, that's incredible.
That's not all Tom Brady.
It's a lot of Tom Brady, though. It's a lot of Tom Brady. So he is number 1 on this list for me, and Aaron Rodgers is number 2. I'd like to make that very clear one more time. Tom Brady, number 1. Aaron Rodgers, number 2.
Question for you.
Answer.
Do you say the same thing if, A, the Seahawks run the ball and Marshawn Lynch scored a touchdown in that Super Bowl 3 years ago, and then, B, they don't pull off this miraculous comeback and all these lucky bounces?
Honestly, probably not. Because the miraculous comeback is kind of part of the legacy for Tom Brady for me.
So, it is.
So I think
obviously the way he performed is unreal, but he had, I think, 2 passes that went through Falcons' hands for one that would have ended the game. And then that Edelman catch, what is that? The Edelman catch between 3 Falcons that bounced 7 times.
Yeah, I mean, some of this has to do with Russell Wilson as well, obviously. What happens to Russell Wilson's grade if the Seahawks do run the ball? He's got 2 Super Bowl rings all of a sudden. I feel like...
Yeah, that's a good point.
I feel like to some degree you have to... I think that if the Seahawks run the ball, Marshawn Lynch gets in for 6, as we all expected him to, I think this does look a little bit different. I think that... I would say Russell Wilson probably sneaks in ahead of Andrew Luck at number 5 if he gets his 2nd ring there. Just because that's production. Maybe. I mean, this is a very young quarterback that's winning Super Bowls. That's production. I would probably rank him ahead of Andrew Luck. And then I don't think Brady's rank would move based off of that 1 touchdown. But if you take away that touchdown by Lynch and also say that he doesn't come back and Matt Ryan gets a Super Bowl ring, I think that you start talking about Matt Ryan as a potential top 5 candidate just on recency bias to some degree. And I think that Tom Brady probably does fall out of that number 1 spot because he's no longer the guaranteed, no doubt number 1 of all time. There's more room for debate because he doesn't have that shining moment, that moment where he really thrived and it wasn't Adam Vinatieri saving him or something like that, all the little arguments that people have against Tom Brady. I would say that I would say that without that run this year and without Seahawks kind of butchering their chance at a Super Bowl, I would probably say that Tom Brady is the number 2 best. Roger moves in the number 1 slot.
See, that's the thing. It's there are very minute details that completely change the way Brady's viewed. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, let's say Vinatieri misses one of those game-winning field goals out of, 2 or 3 that he made
3
way back.
3. Yeah.
Let's say he misses one of them. I think it's even just one of those is completely different.
You talking about the Charles Woodson rule as well? the fumble in the
backfield.
backfield.
The tuck rule.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, there's so many different like little things that affect it that like with Aaron Rodgers, you're getting production year in and year out, and
you're also getting failure year in and year out with Aaron Rodgers because let's be real here. If he's
Mike McCarthy as head coach, if he's
as good as everyone says he is, and he's got the talent around him. Let's not act like Aaron Rodgers doesn't have offensive talent.
Oh, he's got some talent.
He's got a great offensive line.
Doesn't have Randy Moss. Doesn't have Rob Gronkowski.
But he's got Jordy Nelson, who's very good. Greg Jennings was outstanding. Antonio Freeman was very good. Donald Driver is a borderline Hall of Fame candidate. I mean, these guys are all very good players. Martellus Bennett is going to shred defenses this year. I mean, Jared Cook is a lot more talented than people give him credit for. All I'm saying is, yes, I'm with you that he does not have Randy Moss, but Brady only had Randy Moss for a couple of years, and those are outliers in which he actually didn't win a Super Bowl. So
there you go.
How about the guys that Brady turned into great early on in his career, the Deion Branches of the world? Think about how good Deion Branch was in New England, and then when he went to Oakland and Seattle, garbage, irrelevant, completely. I mean, Brady was winning with some pretty porous guys early on in his career as well. Yeah. All I'm saying is, I'm with you that there are a lot of very fine details that kind of need to get hammered out in order to determine how you feel on this subject. But at the same time, when I hammer out those details, I always end up at Brady.
Okay. I always end up at Rodgers. It's just his efficiency every single year. Even when it's a down year. Even when it's a down year, he's still the best in the league.
Hey, I'm not denying Rodgers' greatness. I'm just not going to talk about it for half of a Vikings show like you are. So
That's fair.
So I guess we're going to agree to disagree on this one. I'd love to hear all of your guys' thoughts as well, whether it's on Twitter in the comment section below on the Vikings Territory website, or if you just feel the need to let us know in the iTunes feedback section. We'll take your quarterback rankings there as well. Make sure to put it next to a 5-star rating, though. From there, let's move into the...
That's important. That's a key important piece of that, the 5-star rating. Yeah.
From there, let's move into the wrap-up, kind of the catch-up section here. Obviously, like I made very clear over the last couple episodes, Drew hasn't been present, and it's time to catch him up on some of the material that he missed. So, Drew, I did my top 5 favorite Vikings last week. Sam did as well. We have received an outburst on Twitter, meaning 2 people asked for your favorites. So give us your top 5 favorite Vikings.
An outburst. I don't have David Dixon on mine, so
you don't.
I'll let Sam be the lone, I guess, person to give the feedback
David
for on
Dixon
that.
aficionado, Sam Newman. That's him.
Number 5 is Brett Favre. I mean, it was only one season, but I mean that was magical, and he was a former Packer, and he beat the Packers twice, and that was the most fun I've had. So, and Brett Favre gets a lot of the credit for that. So, number 4 is Jared Allen. There's nobody that seems to have more fun, more character on the field than him. I think back to 2012 when he and who was that Tampa Bay tackle back then when they got into that.
Oh man, the offensive tackle what was his name? What are you talking about?
Was it Donald Penn? Was that who it was? Was it Donald Penn?
It might have. Yes, it was when he was bleeding down his face a little bit.
Yeah, so they got into that. They got into a skirmish after a play, and I think there was flags on both of them for punching each other in the face or whatever.
Extracurricular activity.
Yeah, right. And then the very next play, Allen gets a sack, and the place just.
He basically looked him in the eye and said, "I'm going to get past you, and I'm going to get this sack." And I remember because if you're watching the TV broadcast and you weren't lucky enough to be at that game, the TV broadcast stretched to the entire field, right, and it showed all the Vikings fans kind of getting amped up because Allen had stepped back and done
the place was already just going nuts before the play. The place was going nuts before the sack.
Right, exactly. And then the camera panned in and kind of zoomed in on the defensive line specifically, and you could see on the right corner like how obvious the one-on-one matchup between Penn and Allen was. And it was literally like rip and just past him, and he was just in the backfield in a second. And then of course you get this is I cannot believe that the sack celebration for Allen hasn't came up on either time that he's been mentioned on these lists. How legendary of a sack celebration is
absolutely.
that? Just comes out of nowhere, throws the huge celly, and the Vikings got a sack. And I think it was on like 3rd down too. That was one of the most. I'll give you that. They
lost that game. They got crushed in that game, but that moment in itself was.
That's a good top 5 list for us to talk about at some point. Is top 5 moments as a Viking. Vikings moments, and that's definitely one of them that's very high up on my list personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess in that kind of same mold, as far as an energetic, crazy player, John Randall, number 3. And I wasn't really. I was probably too young to actually watch him live, or when he was actually playing.
Appreciate his greatness during the current
time.
Right.
Yeah, but from what I've seen, from what I highlights, watching old games, and then some documentaries too. This guy, undrafted. I think was he 6 foot, maybe.
Yeah.
Playing defensive tackle. That's unreal.
Vikings have done a really nice job with undersized defensive tackles.
Yeah,
that Alan Page guy
you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be 6 feet tall and weigh 230 or whatever he was and play defensive tackle.
Yeah.
And he did so on an all-pro level. So that's right there. That's enough. And then plus his crazy attitude and his personality on top of that, it's just made for a perfect storm for me. Number 2, Randy Moss, most talented receiver that's ever walked the face of the earth. His character too, the moon at Lambeau.
The swagger.
Obviously there's some controversy around him and kind of the way he left the Vikings twice. But man, the talent, the production, all of it.
The moments.
It won me over. It won me over. Yeah, and just how much fun, the way he scored, the way he produced. It was so much fun. So Moss is number 2. And number 1.
I mean,
Jim Kleinsaucer. Yeah. Is there really a question?
No, there was no question. Why don't you explain to me why he is number 1, though? I don't think this is a question.
Week in and week out, he did his job. All right? His role was not the flashiest.
No.
He never got
it was not
on the front page. Well, maybe he did get on the front page of the Star Tribune.
Yeah,
I would never know.
It was like the guy, though. Maybe as like the...
Not as like Jim Kleinsaucer makes key block for Adrian Peterson. Like that never happened.
It's like Randy Moss scores touchdown, and then they got to...
Right.
Kleinsaucer celebrating with Jermaine Wiggins in the background or something like that.
But I challenge you, if there's a way to watch games from like 1999 to 2008. I know Game Pass goes back to 2009, I think. But
yeah,
if there's a way to watch those games, try and find a time where Jim Kleinsaucer messed up. The guy doesn't mess up. He never messed up ever.
He's always on top of his assignment.
He didn't complain about anything. In his final season, in 2011, the team went 3-13. Didn't complain about anything. Just did his job. Went out quietly. Respect the guy for that. Jim Kleinsaucer, number 1.
Well, I think, like you said, I think that we all saw that one coming a little bit here, but at the same time, we still have to respect you for it because, that's the thing about top 5 lists for Vikings fans is a lot of time you're going to see the Randy Mosses and the Adrian Petersons, like you see Randy Moss and Drew's list. Adrian Peterson was in mine. You're going to see those really obvious names, but it seems like every real die-hard Vikings fan, whether define diehard however you want, but it seems like every diehard Vikings fan always has someone strange atop their list. Someone that everyone else kind of looks at you like, that's really the person that made your Vikings career what it is. Your Vikings
did you have
fandom?
Kelly Campbell in yours?
Kelly Campbell was number 5 in mine. I had Sidney Rice as number 1 in mine. I mean, obviously, Sam had probably the catch-all with that David Dixon pick of his. It's just the point that I'm making here is if you don't have a strange presence in your top 5, I'm not saying you're not a Vikings fan. That's a very rude
You're too mainstream. You're too mainstream. You went on Wikipedia and looked up famous Vikings, and then you picked out 5 that.
You're listening to KDWB when I need you to be listening to B96 or something like that. That's a local radio station joke right there that I don't think you'll even get, but that's a local radio station joke. So that is Drew's top 5 favorites list. Does not disappoint per standard here. Finishing out, Drew, we got a couple minutes left, and you get to give us your Twitter pet peeves, the things about Vikings Twitter that makes your skin crawl.
This is Twitter in general. This is not pertaining to one person or anything, but I have 2 that I want to touch on because you guys touched on a lot of things I wanted to.
We hammered it. Honestly, we dominated.
You guys did do. So these are a couple of these are kind of going off of what you said, specifically the quote cheating one from Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Quote cheating with just one word or one tiny thought that doesn't actually add to the conversation. So when people quote tweet a super either in-depth or analytical tweet or something, or even a deep graphic of a breakdown or whatever it is, and they say wow or unreal, or like, whoa, or something like that. When it like they're not actually adding to the conversation.
Nah.
They could have just tweeted it, and it would have been the same exact effect. Something like that.
But you're not giving the man his retweets or something like that. You're giving him a quote retweet with a one word kind of like.
Yeah, and then this person watches the likes and retweets roll in while the other guy doesn't actually get credit for it. So
yeah, I can see how that's annoying. Yeah.
Which, I mean, looking back, I've probably done it before, but I try not to. I try to actually, bring value to people.
I'm sure we've all been a little bit hypocritical in doing these things. I'm sure that I've done some of this stuff as well, but I think that's pretty obviously
I make a conscious effort to give people value when I tweet, and if I'm not doing that, please unfollow me. My next one is stealing people's pictures when they tweet them. So I remember specifically, this was a couple of days ago.
This is really in-depth. This is very intricate of a real thing.
So this is a specific example I remember, and I'm not going to name any names, but Pro Football Focus tweeted out some cool graphic. It was a member of Pro Football Focus's team. They did, and it came across my timeline. So they tweeted a graphic of Pro Football of Teddy Bridgewater's rookie season and how it stacked up since they've been grading, and it was the third best or something. So I retweeted it. That's all I did was retweet it. And then I saw 3 people who I follow not just quote tweet and then say wow like that. They went a step further, saved the picture on their phone, and then tweet it. Then say the comeback or something like that about Teddy's comeback happening, which may or may not actually happen. And then they get 30, 40 retweets about their stat that they didn't actually come up with. So that's literally breaking the plagiarism laws that you learn when you're in 8th grade.
Yeah, I was going to say that goes in with the whole. For me, I try to be rather unique on Twitter. I try to be myself as much as possible that I can with 140 characters. And if you're stealing someone else's information, whether it's their hard work or it's just a report, that never sets well with me. I'm not saying it's something I can't get over, because it's Twitter. Let's be real here. You can get over all of this stuff, but it does rub me the wrong. I'm just saying what are bad things. I don't care if you're bad at Twitter. I'm just saying they are bad. I agree with you completely. I'm just saying what I'm ramping up to here is if you rub someone the wrong way on Twitter, it's tough to come back because it's Twitter, right? It's something you don't care about, and these people that you're talking to, for the most part, you haven't really built real relationships with. So if they do something that rubs you the wrong way, it's kind of I don't care about you anymore, So I do think that while I do think we're being a little bit pompous by dropping these things that we hate about Twitter, I do think it has some value. So if you are doing some of these things that either Sam and I mentioned in the last episode, or that Drew just mentioned here, maybe stop doing them, or
no. Hey, we're not trying to force them to stop. Just they can know that we don't like what they're doing. We don't like what they're doing. All right, that's all that needs to be said. And if they want to change, that's fine. And we'll appreciate it. But we're not forcing you to change anything. We just won't like it if you continue. That's it.
Fair enough. Okay, so there you have it, folks. You have Drew's final Twitter bit. You have Drew's favorites. We've got him all caught up and ready to roll. He is back for the foreseeable future. And, of course, I'm going to be here because I'm never leaving you guys. Just make sure you understand that I still have a 67-episode streak, and Drew stops at...
Hey,
he's starting over at 1.
That was a very intensive skin condition issue that I had.
This is true. Continue to pray for Drew because he is not fully recovered, but he is back with us, so make sure to check out our next episode that will be dropping on Thursday. Follow us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Vikings Territory. You know where it's all at. Make sure to check out our content. We will continue to pump out stuff. I know that one of our latest guys, Sean Borman, has done a great job recently by keeping everyone filled in on what has been happening with the In Case You Missed It catch-all section. So make sure that, if nothing else, you're checking out Vikings Territory to make sure that you're still caught up on everything, because Sean is doing a great job doing that for everyone. And like I said, I will continue to be working on some of this charting stuff. Drew will be working on it as well as the summer progresses, and we'll be following up with you guys on OTA stuff and all that kind of stuff. So continue listening to the show. We'll be back on Thursday with some more stuff. And yeah, keep following Vikings Territory. Thanks for continuing listening to the show. And follow us on Twitter, as always, at VikingsATL Pod. And we will hear from you guys later on this week.